What's up guys, Izzy with Team TC again, and today we're going to be discussing how to play the Pokemon trading card game. Now, from my last video, if you couldn't tell, some concepts in this game can get a little complicated and confusing. However, today we're just going to be talking at a beginner level, starting from the ground up with just the bare basics, and then later, in a later video, we'll be discussing more complicated concepts and how to start playing at a more competitive level. But for now, like I said, the basics. Firstly, you're going to be needing a 60 card deck. I would highly recommend one of Pokemon's theme decks. You'll be finding Pokemon in your deck, which can range from basics to stage 1s to stage 2s. All the different stages are essentially the evolutions from the video game, so you just power up later in the game, just evolve, and then use more powerful attacks. The attacks on this Pokemon are basically what's going to be getting you the game win to get your prize cards and get those knockouts on your opponent. Now, you will also be needing trainer cards in your deck, which differentiate as supporter cards, item cards, and stadium cards. These essentially just help the game run a little bit more smoothly and can give you an upper hand depending on their effect. And it can also just give your opponent a disadvantage. Next, you'll be needing energy cards. Energy cards power your Pokemon's attacks. Without them, unless you're playing a certain deck, you won't be able to attack, which will not lead to getting a knockout, so you won't be able to get prize cards. Okay, for the setup of the actual game itself, you need to flip a coin or roll a die to decide who goes first. The player who goes first doesn't get to attack, but the player who goes second does. However, the advantage of the first turn is getting to set up a little bit quicker than your opponent. Next, after you decide who goes first and second, you need to draw a hand of 7 cards. A basic type Pokemon must be present in your hand for you to be able to play it face down and proceed. The reasoning for this is if you don't have a Pokemon in play, you do lose the game. So if you don't draw into a basic, you take a mulligan, so you shuffle the cards back into your deck, draw 7 cards again until you get a basic, and then your opponent gets to draw an extra card for every mulligan you take. Now after you find a basic, you put it face down, and then you take the top 6 cards off of your deck and set them face down as prize cards. These prize cards are going to be what you're going to be grabbing after you knock out your opponent's Pokemon, depending on what Pokemon it's going to be, and it can give you an advantage later in the game. Now, the actions that you can take in a turn differentiate a little bit. You don't have to do it in the set order that I provide. There's only 2 actions that are super set in stone, and the first one is drawing a card at the beginning of your turn. If you're unable to draw a card at the beginning of your turn, you lose the game. This is called being decked out. Now, the next option that you can do is you can play a supporter card from your hand. You're only allowed to play 1 supporter card per turn, unless you play a card that says otherwise. And it's just basically read the card. You just do whatever the effect on the card says, whether it be drawing cards, switching your Pokemon, poisoning your opponent, etc., etc. Next, you can attach an energy to your Pokemon. This is a really important part of your turn because if you have no energy attached to your Pokemon, you cannot attack. And branching off of this a little bit, you do not discard the energy when you attack either, so basically you're assigning that energy to that Pokemon unless you have a card that says that you can move it. Okay, the next cards that you can play, the next actions that you can take, I should say, is you can play item cards. There's no limit to how many items that you can play in a turn, and basically item cards are really where the edge in the game comes. You just play and it can give you an advantage or you can give your opponent a disadvantage. You can switch your Pokemon, you can do a lot of weird things with item cards that we can talk about later. Next, you can play a stadium card. You can only play 1 stadium card per turn, and you can use it to discard your opponent's stadium, or you can use your stadium cards to do different kind of stuff with your deck. It's basically read the card once again. However, your opponent does get to take advantage of the stadium as well if it does apply to them. Alright, next, you can use abilities. Now, abilities really differs from Pokemon to Pokemon. Some Pokemon don't have abilities, some Pokemon do. Really, once again, it is read the card. It can tells you when you can use it, when you cannot use it, etc., etc. Next comes the final part of your turn, that is the second part that is concrete and written in stone. You can attack or pass, which ends your turn, and then your opponent can begin the very phases that we just talked about, and it goes back and forth in that order until somebody wins the game by taking their prize cards or decking out their opponent. Now, If you're really looking into playing the Pokemon trading card game but you don't want to spend any money on the game, something I would recommend is the trading card game online. It is provided by Pokemon itself and it is free. The longer you play, the more stuff you get to unlock, the more decks you'll be able to build, and the more you'll be able to experiment with different techniques. Their tutorial is very descriptive. It's a little bit lengthy, but I would highly recommend it. It's what helped me get into the more of the competitive scene to learn how to play. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Hopefully I got it underneath 6 minutes. That was my goal. And if you do decide to try the Pokemon trading card game online, drop your username below. I'll add you, give you some free packs online. I will be giving free packs out to the first 10 people that do drop their username below who are subscribed to our channel. So, just let me know, drop your username below, and expect some free packs in a little bit. Catch you guys later.